Today on Rates and Barrels, we fire up the Trademaster 3000 and try to find fits for a few position players that could be on the move before the trade deadline.
It's not easy. The position player has to join a defense, has to play a position, has to be a fit for the new team. We try to find those fits and give you some realistic acquisitions for a few teams out there.
And what happens when everybody's looking to fix the same flaw? Maybe you go out and get something that exploits that flaw. Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Wednesday, July 22nd. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris, and Jed Lowry here with you. Eno, what's going on?
I have an announcement to make.
All right.
I am a winner.
I
won last night at trivia night.
Ooh. Okay. I'm impressed.
Round of applause, please.
Did you get a trophy?
No, we got a certificate for 4 free fish and chips.
Okay.
So take that and put it in your eye. I would say we had a ringer. It was a team event. I do like team events for the future because then, A, I can blame somebody else. B, I don't get the yips as bad because I'm like, well, I'm just here to maybe help, The funniest part was the only baseball question was basically what was the baseball team that inspired Moneyball?
Come on. The baseball questions really at trivia night are usually very basic.
Then they asked when, what the date of that Moneyball came out, and I couldn't. We lost that tiebreaker. I tried. I triangulated. I tried to help, but we lost that tiebreaker. We won the overall by being basically second place in every round. My friend Eitan was our ringer. He is like high up in the libraries here at Stanford. He's like one of those brains. So he knew like who the actress was that took over for Kirstie Alley in Cheers. And I was like, who?
And that's how you do it. You just you keep it in cruise control until the finals come around, and then you just you knock it out of the park.
Right. We were clutch.
It's like Jordan Walker, right? It's like you didn't hit the most in the first. You just had to beat the second round. Get the number, and then I'll tell you what. I just to jump right into baseball on this. Like, sorry to change the topic, but holy cow! Like that final round. I know I haven't seen you guys in a week, but that final round, Jordan Walker, unbelievable.
I love it. And you're right. The vibes of him, like the smooth swing, the like they don't boo nobodies, like the parents. I mean, I love that whole thing. That was great.
So what I'm trying to say is you are essentially the Jordan Walker of trivia night.
I was not sweating. I loved it. I had none of the yips because of the setting, and I did contribute. So we got 46 out of 50 questions right to win, and I contributed 2.
50 questions. How long did it take? Because last time I played bar trivia with some friends, I think it was more like 20 questions, and they stretched it out way too long.
It was pretty quick. Like he read it out once, read it a second time, and like did not give us much time. So we did it in 2 hours.
Yeah, I like that pacing a little better than the Wisconsin. How many old fashions can we get you to buy?
I knew what the boss attack was in Galaga, the tractor beam. And I knew that they named Snickers after their horse. That Snickers was a horse.
The candy bar was named after a horse.
Yeah.
I am not a marketing expert, but I would probably not name food after animals if I was in that line of work.
A candy bar? Yeah, I guess so. And Babe Ruth is not named after Babe Ruth. It's named after the president's daughter.
Just a fountain of knowledge here. Well, I'm glad you're feeling good. Glad, Jed, you had a great trip when you were
turning
gone.
over a new leaf.
A lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I did. No, it was fun. Got to like I said, the home run derby was fantastic. All-Star game was fun. Little maybe there could have been some more fireworks in the All-Star game, but still a fun environment. Philly fans obviously are very engaged. They love they love their baseball there. And so yeah, I had a great trip. Happy to be back home though.
Excellent. Glad to have you back. We have been working on a lot of trade-related conversation. Yesterday, we kind of broke down the whole purpose of the big board, trying to just explain like all the possibilities being put in one place, understanding that even with 75 players on the big board, you're not going to get all the guys that actually get traded. Some of the most exciting names on that board probably won't move, but we're going to try and find matches today on the hitting side. We are firing up the Trade Master 3000 for the first time this year. I hope we have the electric start ready to go because it's always tough to fire that thing up for the very first time. I started poking around a few other tools that I wanted to call some attention to. We'll put a link to the big board itself in the show description, but Baseball Reference also has what they call the franchise trades tool. So you can look back at all the trades made between any two teams, because there's some teams you're like, Mets, Phillies, they would never trade. It's the same division thing, and you just can't really think of any at the top of your head. It's a great way to go back and kind of check your own brain and jog your memory and remember some guys' moments along the way. But there's a bigger question here before we start getting into some names. You know, you brought this up in our production meeting on Tuesday. It's harder to trade position players. It's like harder to find the ideal fits on a roster in the middle of the season, right? I mean, the way we tend to go about this, if you want to know how the sausage is made, we look at a page like the Fangraphs by position WAR projections. We look at that grid and find the weaknesses and start circling those and say, these are the areas teams are going to try and upgrade. And that generally works. But even within that, you could still run into some difficulties finding the exact right fit for each team that has a weakness.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's tough is that, you know, position players can potentially make more of an impact playing every day. And so you, like, to some extent, you have to pay more. And we've been talking about there's this equilibrium here where people just don't want to pay that much and they want to get just little help here and there. Another thing that's happening right now in baseball is that there are fewer and fewer free agents. So that means, you know, the people are signing extensions, you know, early extensions. You know, there are just fewer free agents in any given class, which means that there were fewer rentals at the trade deadline, right? That means that, you know, those things are related to each other. You know, in this upcoming free agency period, when it comes to you know, impact batters that you could have, you know, you're looking at Springer, you know, Gleyber Torres, but will the Tigers hold? Like then it's like who's available and who's holding, you know, like Ian Happ might be available, but you know, the Cubs are probably holding. So, you know, you have to look through this and find, you know, expiring guys like, you know, that's why we keep giving Gino Suarez everywhere. And then the last bit I think that's really interesting, and I want to get a little perspective from Jed on, is just that, you know, when you take a pitcher, you can kind of, you know, put him on the staff and say, okay, we're going to find your place in the staff. You might be a get us there guy that's like a fifth starter until we get to the playoffs, and then your reliever, whatever it is. Like we have a whole bunch of roles on the staff, and you can find your way in, and we'll figure you out. But a position player plays a position, and especially if they play shortstop or catcher, I'd love to hear from Jed, like what can happen defensively to the sort of camaraderie and just like the way that you work defensively as a unit when you get a new player on August 1st. Like how does that work? How easy is it to fold them in, and what kind of work can you do to make it easier?
Yeah, I would say the lineup too. You know, it's not just the defense really matters, especially up the middle, right? If you're talking short and second, those positions do matter. There's an instinct, there's a trust that you know, in particular the trust that you build. I go back to, you know, my experience in 2014 with the A's. We traded Cespedes for Lester, and in that particular year, we weren't really like, there was a lot of position players that came in to that year with high expectations, and we all kind of had down years, right? Except Cespedes. And we need the ace in a guy like Lester? We did, but it changed the dynamic of the lineup completely. Even, we got Johnny Gomes, who's he's a World Series champion. He performed really well, but Yoenis Cespedes can win you games both in the outfield and with his bat. And in that particular
kind of calms
year,
you down too a little bit. Be like, that's our stud. Like, I just need to maybe get on base for him or whatever.
Well, I think everybody, when you're a Major League Baseball player, your mindset more often than that. First of all, you're stubborn, and secondly, like you're gonna believe that you're gonna get a hit every time you're up there, right? Like you've been through enough ups and downs to like know that you're gonna have success eventually, and so you always, it's always the next at bat, right? And so, but when you take a guy who is having a really, really good year and is kind of the middle of the lineup, that one, I think I've said this before on the show, like sometimes these trade deadline bat acquisitions, they either were great or they're terrible because the chemistry, you don't really know. You start shuffling guys through the order. It can work really well if you have the personalities for it, or it can kind of blow up in your face. And I think for us, we searched for the next few weeks trying to figure out what our identity was as an offense. Without
you really backed into that playoffs that year. I mean, it was like the last day you made it or something.
Yeah, exactly. And we played, the most epic game I've ever been a part of with that Royals A's wild card game, but we ultimately lost. But it was hard to reestablish an identity when you took the best player out of the lineup.
And that's what happens defensively too, is you have an identity of like, you sort of know what balls you can get to, what balls you'll let them get to. You kind of get to a point where you understand, where a relay throw will come from and how to look. I mean, there was a really cool play last night where Zach Neto bounced the ball to his second baseman because he knew that the sun was in his second baseman's eyes when he was looking at him. Mm-hmm. So he bounced the ball to keep that out. And, that's that sort of thing I think is not likely to happen on August 2nd, but in a new Keystone combo, you know what I mean? Just like, there's some feel there. So,
yeah.
I guess what would you do if you weren't playing short or second? You just got a new shortstop, or you got a new Keystone partner on August 1st. How would you? This year it's August 4th, but like how would you just try to acclimate yourselves quickly? Just take a lot of infield together. Just do live infield something.
No, you're just going out there. You're talking a lot. You're taking ground balls together. And hey, where do you like the feed, right? Because just as simple as like, hey, some shortstop, some second baseman like to come across the base, some like to wait. Like just knowing where that person wants the ball is very meaningful. And having experience at both positions, I know like I would try to anticipate the bad throw and then change my footwork depending on the throw. But some guys, they're coming across, like they want it. They want it out front of the base. Like, it might not sound like a lot, but if a shortstop is coming across the base and you have to, as a second baseman, you got to feed it 2 feet further to your left, and you've been dialed in for the last 4 months putting it to the backside of the base, like different arm angles, those little things like that can take a little bit of time to adjust. And like I said, you're going to try to do it as quickly as you can, but I'll just remind you, like, these guys are not robots, right? Like that's we're not putting the golf club in the robot and have the robot to hit the ball, and we can measure these all the launch angles and exit velocities because the robot is taking the exact same swing every single time.
There's also like a leadership aspect, right? Like, I'm thinking of like Ryan Jeffers. He seems pretty likely to get traded, but the catcher and the shortstop are the leaders of the infield, of the defensive, sort of unit. I would think that maybe now with more pitch suggestions, we know that 6 teams are making pitch suggestions from the dugout. Maybe with more pitch suggestions and ABS and all the kind of ways that the catcher's defense has been kind of throttled a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit easier to just like stick a Ryan Jeffers in and be like, yeah, good luck. But you still need to know your pitchers. You still need to know the way their pitches move to frame them at all. Like you need to. There's a lot you need to learn really quickly. It'd be kind of, I don't know. I would not take Ryan Jeffers just because of these things, but I might not. Like if there was another way to upgrade my team, I might not focus on upgrading a catcher.
Yeah, and once again, it just goes back to identity, catching perspective, having never caught in my life. But you have to be able to interact with the pitcher, right? You have to know what to say, and probably most importantly, what not to say to the different personalities. And so if you come in and there's a clash in personality there, that can affect trust. That can affect the way that the way that you execute pitches. I think that I said this earlier, but a lot of it boils down to trust. Now, I say that if there is an objective way to upgrade the team, I got to assume that the guys that are making these decisions understand this enough, and that the risk of this doesn't outweigh the potential upgrade from a production perspective. So if there are any red flags that it's they've weighed that.
Yeah, and maybe what you would say is, hey, we could use some help at DH too. So we'll take Ryan Jeffers. He can DH for a couple games while he gets his feet wet. He's going to go hang out with the backup catcher. We have a really good defensive backup catcher. We can change in game if we need to sometimes to go to the backup catcher. Maybe we'll keep 3 catchers on there and he's one of our DHs, So there's a lot of things you can do about that. But, then the last thing is, one of the things I think is really interesting is like, do you attack your strengths as a team or your weaknesses? Do you make your strengths even better? My proposal for this was Luis Arraez to the Rays. And this is one where I'm thinking, instead of, trying to get more power, the team in baseball that makes the most contact, hey, make even more contact. Just make the most contact, And I think that there is some room for him to play at first, DH, second base. They're used to moving guys around, and I think there's an opportunity there to just lean into this go mentality. They are a team that runs the bases well. They're a team that makes a ton of contact and puts pressure on the defense. They go oppo a lot. I just think that this could actually work. Luis Arraez to the Rays.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I think one thing about it that also stands out to me is that we have some questions about Chandler Simpson and how much they're going to continue to play him in left field. He's part of their put a ton of balls in play lineup. He's not the only one. Yandy Diaz has a 13.5% K rate this year. Junior Caminero at 18.2%. Like those two guys being able to do damage and bring that K number down is huge for them. But I do think it's a good fit for a few different reasons. And they seem to be very selective in Tampa Bay about where they're willing to have their defensive weaknesses. And second base seems like a spot where they're a little more comfortable than most teams if they feel like they're getting the bat they want. And that doesn't even account for the fact that Luis Arraez has been a very good defender at second base this year. I don't know how sustainable it is, but it's at least less of a concern today than it was 4 months ago.
Yeah, if you do look at the defensive numbers, Mike Petriello had a piece on this. Like some of it's front loaded. Like he had some really excellent plays early on, and then he's been sort of above average since. But above average is good for him. And you're right, they put Gavin Lux there. Gavin Lux had been sort of DHing for the Reds by the time they acquired him. Lux also got taken off his rehab. So it's not like they're just waiting for a second baseman. Right now, they're kind of doing Richie Palacios and Ben Williamson. So there's just really an opening at second base.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, he's not a guy that's going to steal a ton of bases for you, but he's going to, his base running value is still in the 87th percentile this year, so he's doing something on the bases to get some credit, right? Taking the extra base. And I mean, I was actually surprised by this too. Like he's right now in the 99th percentile for outs above average. So, once again, I don't know if that's positioning or, Ron Washington still has the magic. But he's a very, very good player that, to your point, make your strengths even stronger. You add a guy like Luis Arraez to that. Put him in between Caminero and Yandy, and I feel like that's going to be that's just going to make a lot of pitchers work really hard at the top of that lineup.
The other thing about the Rays, and you brought up Ryan Jeffers a minute ago, like I think the Rays are one of the teams that makes more changes behind the plate than most. Like they acquire catchers.
They even
season,
cycle
they
through catchers
them.
And stuff.
So so I feel like they maybe have built some kind of infrastructure, or maybe it's just not having a permanent solution. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit in this instance, but they seem like they're content to try new catchers in season. So they could be the team that goes out and trades for Ryan Jeffers because that's an upgrade too. I could see the Rays having a deadline like that. Just like throwing 2 or 3 upgrades in this tier onto that roster and feeling pretty good about it. Yeah. We're going to hit a quick break. When we come back, we have a lot of names to break down. I think Jed got to the top of the pile with his selection, so we'll break that proposed trade down in just a few minutes. Welcome back to Rates and Barrels. Jed, I think you took the clubhouse lead with this suggestion. We've wondered for a few months on this show what the Nationals might do at the trade deadline, and you want to trade C.J. Abrams. Where are you sending him to?
I think riding the hot hand right now and looking at strengths to take the opposite approach that Eno did with making a strength even stronger. I looked at C.J. Abrams to Boston, and with the ability that team has to play defense, if there's any concerns about C.J. playing short long term. I mean, if you surround him with the guys that they have there already and the upgrade that he is on the offensive side to pretty much anybody on the infield that they're getting outside of Wilson Contreras, I mean, this is a pretty good fit to me, and somebody who could even slide into second base if they didn't think he was defensively good enough at short. But right now, I mean, these guys, as we all know, are on a 14-game winning streak. They're 23rd in WRC plus as a team. They're 27th in WAR and WRC plus from shortstop. So even if you take a little bit of hit defensively, I think this is the upgrade from a shortstop perspective that makes a ton of sense. And you still have IKF there, who's a really quality defender at short if things go sideways. So I think that, if you're the Red Sox and you retain IKF and you put CJ into that mix, I really like the fit, and I think it's an instant upgrade offensively.
I think it also ticks the box of organizations that have recently dealt with each other, and that makes a lot of sense. Paul Taboni came from the Red Sox, spent 10 years in Boston. He's the president of baseball operations for the Nats. They made the trade that sent Jake Bennett to Boston. I believe it was Luis Perales, I think, was the guy that went the other way back to the Nats in that one. But either way, like you look at the bottom 5 WAR projection at shortstop, near that same level of projection at second base. Regardless of whether Trevor Story gets back at some point this year and he's still under contract for next year, you have other places you can play C.J. Abrams. So there's a few reasons why that does make some sense.
Yeah, I think the infield looks like an easier place to upgrade. I know that Jarren Duran has not played well, to put it lightly, but you also have Roman Anthony in the wings. So no matter what you think of that outfield scenario right now, whatever you think of Duran, like, whoever comes in has to deal with the fact that Roman Anthony's coming back. So I wouldn't go and make a big splash in the outfield. I think that Roman Anthony, Ceddanne Rafael, or Willie Robredo is a really good outfield.
Yeah, really good outfield.
Yeah.
If you're in the Nationals front office and you're making a decision like this, what are you seeking to get back, right? Because you do have some momentum. You're having a better year than the projections thought you might, but it was a pretty good core, and they've made some pretty good decisions around that to sort of maximize it this year. But if you're trading away someone that you could have for the next 2 seasons in Abrams, are you getting another major league ready player at a different position? Are you trying to get a combination of prospects? Are you trying to bolster your pitching even more, since it seems like your position player core is a lot stronger than your organizational pitching right now? Like, what do you think the priority would be if you're actually going to follow through on a deal like that?
I mean, it's got to be pitching.
It's got to be pitching, but honestly, like if it's me, I'm asking for Marcelo Meyer.
Yeah.
And then I'm saying I want Marcelo Meyer and I want, a pitcher. And it doesn't have to be, I instead of going, hey, I want Connolly early and a hitter, I'm going, I want Marcelo Meyer and, we can talk about the pitcher. Who's the pitcher going to be? It doesn't have to be one of your top guys. There's other guys that you've got a double A that I like, So maybe I can get a couple arms along with Marcelo Meyer, but I want somebody that I could potentially put into short to replace Abrams.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a ton of sense. And a guy that, hasn't organizationally just a lot of promise, a lot of high expectations, hasn't really clicked yet. So if you could get a guy like Abrams who's a little bit more established, and send Meyer to a place where he can kind of build his resume, and still get some value out of that, out of the player. I mean, I don't want to close the book on Meyer in Boston, but I do like that. And you get a guy with a ton of upside that could turn into a CJ Abrams like player.
Yeah, and I do think that kind of cost makes sense for a couple years of Abrams. So. That if they are going to hold the line at that kind of cost, he may not get traded, because Meyer would be one of the better names that we've seen traded at the deadline over the last few years.
Yeah, and you do have a few more years of control of Abrams, so I think that from that perspective, it's not a rental.
I've got one that is a rental. How about this? How about Luis Robert to the Guardians, right? The Cleveland outfield, an ongoing problem, even with the arrival of Chase DeLauder. Stephen Kwan playing better recently, but he can't play left and center. I know Angel Martinez has been on the IL recently, so they've been down a guy that looked really good at the beginning of the season. He was cooling off a little bit before that IL stint as well. I think with Robert, it's the kind of like short-term thing where you can get the Mets to pay most of the bill if that's the issue. He's actually not that pricey anyway, so that shouldn't be something that holds this deal up. I saw this stat go by last night. Luis Robert has the only 3 balls the Mets have hit over 112 miles per hour this year, which is weird since he's only played 26 games. I mean, that's not great for the 2026 Mets that's true, but we're talking about a guy that'd be top 5 on the Guardians by WRC plus projection for the rest of the season, and being a guy that has a good floor defensively in center field, they wouldn't have to stretch some of their corner guys by continuing to play them at positions they can play but aren't necessarily ideal at playing. So I think it makes sense for a few different reasons. You get that baseline defense at a position of need, you bolster the depth of your lineup, and you have that possibility of the exciting version of Luis Robert clicking at just the right time. I think that's always the thing that draws people in. I think Cleveland's a great fit for him.
Yeah,
he would immediately have the fastest bat on the Guardians.
It's pretty nice.
I think that's interesting. It's the most power potential, at least.
Yeah, and I mean, if you just look at, you look around the infield, they got a couple switch hitters and Ramirez and Martinez, but, you got Kwan, you got DeLauder, you got Manzardo, you got Bazana. There's a lot of lefties, excuse me, there's a lot of lefties in this lineup. So I think from a defensive perspective and adding a right-handed power bat that, Cleveland seems to always be lacking in, at least the power bat in general. I really like the fit, and it's not a huge cost, and the Mets are seemingly open for business for just about anybody they can get some value for.
Yeah, I can see that one being an easy deal to get done.
The only question I have is, Cleveland seems to be struggling a little bit at first base, where Manzardo has been not great over the last few months. But I think you could just play Rhys Hoskins pretty much every day at first base, maybe in a platoon. And that opens up DH. So maybe you keep DeLauder fresh by DHing him sometimes. It's not an overall problem. You still have guys who can play first base. So
yeah, and I mean,
like
and
that fit.
just from like a availability of first base, who are you adding that's better than the ceiling of Luis Robert?
Yeah, there's not really. I think they're going to be shopping in the expiring bin, in the rental bin, and are they going to re-up with Josh Bell?
Yeah,
I mean,
you could
always on the move.
I mean, I guess Luis Arraez could slide over to first, but we've already traded him to the Rays. Nathaniel
Nate
Lowe.
Yeah, Nate Lowe,
but is that like a huge upgrade? And Wilson Contreras is on the big board here, but he's not moving exactly.
Yeah.
So I just from an actual availability standpoint, I mean, you could say maybe a Christian Walker who's on the list, but the AL West, the Rangers have taken over the AL West, so who knows what's going to happen in that division down the stretch.
Yeah, Christian Walker, just to throw his name out into the conversation for a moment, still has 1 year left on that deal. They gave him $3.60 before the 2025 season. He's done, I think, a pretty good job of bouncing back from a slightly disappointing first season. He had the oblique injury in the first half that slowed him down, and I think a lot of the profile kind of looks the way you'd expect it to for a 35-year-old. Like, we're starting to see a little bit of aging, but last year kind of looks like it was more a health-related decline than a pure skills-related decline. I just don't know if you're going to find a team willing to take on 2027 at $20 million.
And the latest scuttlebutt out of Houston is like, while the market would love to buy some of their players, Jeremy Pena, they have some expiring deals that would be attractive to the market. I think even Walker would be attractive to the market. While the market wants those players, Houston seems to be going the other direction and looking to buy. So,
once again,
I don't know how much of that's true. A lot of this is posturing on the market. Oh no, we're not really but if you overwhelm us for Pena, like we're back in.
Yeah, of course. I mean, make me an offer I can't say no to.
You're right.
But you look at that division with Houston, Seattle, Texas. 2 wins apart in the win column, and Houston's 3 games back. I mean, it's just
the leader is 1 game over 500, so it seems attainable.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't see the Astros, and knowing Jim Crane, he's going to want to win. He's not looking to fold any of his hands unless he just doesn't have anything, and I can't imagine him sitting here 3 games back before we hit August thinking we're out of it.
Be ashamed to waste what appears to be an MVP caliber season from Yordan Alvarez too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I've got a little bit of a rant here that I gotta set up because we're not a Brewers show, but I'm allowed to talk Brewers. GBR is not allowed to talk Brewers. I'm allowed to talk Brewers, and I've been thinking about what the Brewers should get, and we've talked about it a little bit on this pod. And I just wanted to set up a couple things. One is there's a difference somehow between the regular season and the playoffs. And in the regular season, yes, the Brewers have done better than projections for like 5-6 years in a row. And we've tried to, on the show, unpack it in different ways. There's a really great piece, if you want to read, by Ben Lindbergh about how the Brewers have been clutch as a team for like 6 years in a row. They've had the best clutch stretch for a team in the history of baseball, basically. And so, why is that? And he tried to unpack it. And one of the things he found was that they let the ball travel more than other teams. And so what happens, I think, is that, they let the ball travel, they go the other way. So you set up your defense for going the other way. And then when it comes to a clutch moment, what often happens is your pitcher throws breaking balls. Your pitcher throws softer stuff. He wants whiffs. He wants ground balls. He's not going to give you a fastball cookie, with 2 guys on, right? So what happens if you let the ball travel normally and then they throw you an off-speed pitch, you pull it. And so maybe what ends up being is that the people are defending them the wrong way and pitching them the wrong way for their approach. And that's worked for a long time. But I do wonder if now that Ben's written about this, like how much of it can other teams now undo? Like how much can they go up against that? So I think that's a possibility. That's the reason why. The other possibilities we've seen is the strength of the bullpen, and my favorite is that they get the most out of rookies. And I think that there's something about their defensive projections, that they understand defensive projections maybe better than most, and that they know that they can put Cooper Pratt at shortstop and he's going to be a major league shortstop right away. That sort of deal. You go buy Joy Ortiz, you don't know what his bat's going to do, but his defense is going to play. So there's a few different reasons why they've done things where they've overperformed the regular season. I do think the postseason is a crapshoot, but we have found some things in the postseason that work. One, contact plays a little bit more importantly in the postseason because you're facing better pitchers. You basically you want to make contact. You're facing harder fastballs, better pitchers. Like the ability to make contact plays up a little bit there. On the flip side, though, we know that teams that hit home runs and score more of their runs from home runs retain more of their offense in the playoffs. So that's kind of paradoxical findings about the playoffs, but I think it's just two different ways to kind of succeed in the playoffs. Kind of, make a lot of contact, ideally make a lot of contact and hit a lot of homers. The Brewers have not hit a lot of homers. They've not had a lot of postseason success in this run that they've been on. So I do want to give them homers. I don't want to affect their strategy, which is to, retain all of your prospects and to kind of, keep the machine going. That's why I'm going to give them Jorge Soler, because A, it won't cost anything. It won't cost a real prospect. It won't cost much. He's a rental. He's not thought of as a top guy. I don't know where he is on the board. He's like in the 30s on the board. He's not a top guy. And you don't need to start him so much that he's going to affect your defense. Basically, what I want him to do is platoon with Jake Bauers. I want him there to hit the occasional home run. If he moves Jake Bauers around to first, if he takes some time away from Vaughn or Lara or somebody, and he's playing well, if he's hitting homers, that's fine. But the worst case scenario, he comes in, he platoons with Jake Bauers, lefty, righty, boom. And I think it's a small thing that could end up affecting you. It did not cost anything for the Braves when they got Jorge Soler, and it turned out to get them a World Series. So that's what I'm hoping for, is a big World Series home run from Jorge Soler that costs them a guy that may turn into the fourth best reliever on a different team.
Yeah, I would say that my only pushback is I love the idea of more power going to Milwaukee. I think the challenge is Christian Yelich has started one game in the outfield this season. He's become a full-time DH. So I think if you add a guy like Soler, in order to make the pieces fit, that means you're committing to putting Yelich back out on the outfield grass a little bit. And I don't know if they're really willing to do that.
Or Soler,
right? Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, clearly outfield defense is the defense as a whole is important to them. So we'll have to see if they're willing to take a shot like that. Love it from a power perspective. Love it from could be so inexpensive, could just be like a thought of as a bench guy. But wondering if they'll actually try something that extreme given what they've done with Yelich.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, this is a big right-handed bat with a ton of power. The splits this year, he's only got one homer off of a lefty versus 10 off of righties.
I have seen that, but 1 year platoon splits, speaking analytically, are not predictive.
Yeah. No, certainly not predictive. And would I rather have Jorge Soler facing a nasty lefty than any lefty, including Christian Yelich? Probably. But I just to throw that out there as a point, like the guy hasn't dominated left-handed pitching this year. I don't know. Like I said, not a point that I'm gonna get hung up on, but worth mentioning that if you're looking at it from a single lens of this season, not the greatest splits this year, but a guy that once again is a huge upgrade on the power position or in the power bat for the team.
Your guy that you've got, your second guy, Jed.
Yes.
could be a fit in Milwaukee because he's a little bit more comfortable on the outfield grass, but you've got him going somewhere else. Who's your next guy?
Yeah. So, once again, this is a team that I think that we're always, with their roster construction, always looking to add a right-handed bat. And they tried to do that this offseason and it hasn't worked, but it's the Phillies. Adolis Garcia's kind of came in. He was supposed to be that right-handed bat in the outfield, tore his lat, had surgery on it. So I look at where this team is sitting in the standings, and you've kind of just made a complete 180 from where they started the season. Still 3 games back of the Braves, but very, very much in the hunt. And you look at the roster construction, particularly on the lineup side, pretty much everything is left-handed production. I mean, you've got Schwarber, you've got Harper, you got Marsh, and you got Stott. Just from a WRC plus perspective, Derek Hill is the only right-handed hitter that is a WRC plus above 100. So if you're looking at this roster construction, and Derek Hill, not a guy that has had a ton of plate appearances. You're talking about 61 plate appearances. So if you look at the top 4, Schwarber, Harper, Marsh, and Stott, from a bulk number, Trey Turner, still productive player, but the WRC plus is at 88 this year. And you go down to JT Realmuto next at 77. There's just not a lot of right-handed production in this lineup. And, right now with essentially Marsh, Crawford, and I mean, whoever else they can throw out there, I thought that this would be a really good fit. Baltimore living well below expectations this year. Adding the right-handed outfield bat to Philly in the position they're in makes a ton of sense.
We've stumbled on a problem here.
Yeah.
So against left-handed pitching this year.
Yep.
I'm going to read to you 24 through 27 or even 28 in the rankings. 24th against left-handed pitching, Milwaukee Brewers. 25th, San Diego Padres. 26th, Philadelphia Phillies. 27th, Cleveland Guardians. 28th, Seattle Mariners. All of those teams are going to be looking for a right-handed bat. Actually, most of those teams, you've even seen public affirmations, they're looking for a right-handed bat. We have given away some right-handed bats. We've given Jorge Soler, Luis Robert, and now Taylor Ward. And each may have their flaws, but the league in general is struggling against lefties. The median WRC plus against lefties this year is 95. So the league is struggling against lefties. There's not a lot of right-handed bats available, and there's a bunch of teams that want them. So I don't know what that means for the market. Maybe a better return than you expect for Robert or for Ward or for anything. Because yes, Ward's bat speed's down a little bit. His power's down a little bit, but he still has a really excellent plate approach. He's probably my favorite of the group, just because Robert has these health issues, and I would hate to trade for him and then have him just be injured for half the time that I got him. But we have stumbled on this issue where there are 5 teams looking at 3 quality right-handed outfield bats.
If I can't get the right-handed outfield bat I think I just want more left-handed pitching to throw at the teams that I'm likely to see in the playoffs, right? Just go the other way. Like, if you can't solve the problem on one side, make everybody else's problem worse. But that's where a name like George Springer gets kind of thrown into the conversation too. But kind of like we talked about with that Yelich situation, the fit has to be there. Like, you don't really want to put George Springer in the outfield. You want him to be on a team where you can DH, and you got to make sure your current DH doesn't have to move into a spot where they're taking on more defensive responsibilities. So I think this all points back to what we were saying a little bit earlier in the show. This is why it's hard to find the ideal fit. You're looking for something that helps your lineup overall, but it has to fit with the other pieces you have.
And has to be a rental, and has to come from a seller. And
can't be too expensive. All those things, all that criteria has to be met. We're going to hit one more break. I've got one more name to throw into the mix. I think this one may be mildly controversial, but I think we'll have some Yankees fans on board. We'll reveal who that player is, and we've got one more segment after that Eno doesn't even know about yet.
Oh, boy.
Welcome back to Rates and Barrels. Last trade of the day. How about Anthony Volpe to the Braves, right? It's time for a fresh start for Anthony Volpe. Part of the reason I think this is time is we're in a stretch right now. Volpe started 6 of the Yankees' last 14 games. What? Why is he not playing more than that? He's even sitting against some lefties.
It's not even against all lefties, yeah.
It's strange. The defense has come back a bit. I think, hey, having 2 healthy shoulders seems to help play shortstop in the big leagues, so who'd have thought? But you have George Lombard Jr. getting closer to being ready for the big leagues. You already have Jose Caballero pushing Volpe out of the lineup as they mix and match using Caballero's versatility. At this point, you see enough teams contending that are just looking at least for a good defensive shortstop and maybe one that could still be league average, possibly better with the bat. I think Volpe's still that guy, right? He's 25. We know he was hurt last year. He needed shoulder surgery. He hurt his shoulder in early May. So I think we were kind of robbed of getting a true sense of what his follow-up was going to be to that 3.5 win season in 2024. Getting away from the pressures and expectations of being the Yankees starting shortstop and a first-round pick with a new organization seems like it could only be a good thing. The defense has come back, though, +6 OAA so far this year. Hasn't even been 400 innings in the field, so that's a really nice start for him defensively. I think Atlanta makes a lot of sense because I believe their closest shortstop prospect is John Heel. He's at high A right now. This buys them a lot of time, and Heel's not that elite sort of can't-miss prospect that some teams have. He's just like their best guy right now. So I think you're solving a multi-year sort of problem. You're at least getting a good defender. I don't know who goes back to the Yankees on the other side of a deal like that, but that to me seems like one really intriguing possibility if they can work it out.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, Volpe, to your point, just from a playing time perspective, like, you know, he's fallen out of favor seemingly by the Yankees organization. You know, so why not try to retain or get some value back for a guy that is still young, 25 years old, has some ability, but you know, it just sometimes you just get to the point in the arc of your career where you need a change of scenery. This seems like a good one, and you know, he can step into a place in Atlanta where there's a lot of big bats around him, and you know, maybe they can get a little bump just from that, you know, lowering expectations, or I guess resetting some of the expectations from an organizational perspective. Like, there's still at this point, man, it would basically take a couple of All-Star games or a World Series. It feels like a World Series win for Volpe to like be back in the good graces of the fans and or the organization with the Yankees, and that's just a heavy lift.
The Braves right now are running out Jim Jarvis, a left-hander. I doubt that they'd platoon at the position, but the Yankees seem to be content to kind of use a couple different shortstops. The Braves have, you know, kind of cycled through some guys at shortstop, so maybe they would do a platoon at short. I haven't laid eyes on enough Jim Jarvis defense to know exactly what his defense is, but I can point out that in Detroit, where he was before Atlanta, he seemed to be trending towards a utility situation where he was playing all over the diamond. And so, you know, in terms of plate approach, Volpe's plate approach is better than Jarvis's. His bat speed is better. So I do think that he has a little bit more upside than Jarvis. And I think Jarvis is a little bit more of a stopgap. But it's fair to say that Jarvis has had a pop-up year this year. This is the best slugging he's ever had in AAA this year from the Braves. So I don't know what he did to increase his power, but something has changed there. That would be why they wouldn't do it, I guess, is that they think that Jarvis can be fine for the near term. They also might wonder what Ha-Seong Kim is going to give them. So, you know, I don't. This doesn't seem very high probability, but I kind of like it.
Yeah, my only counterpoint would just be on George from the Yankees perspective with Lombard. I mean, you don't want to repeat history on this and rush a guy to the big leagues. So, you kind of, if you do trade Volpe in that regard, you better have, be really comfortable with, Caballero playing short, or have a backup plan to acquire another one. I mean, Lombard is still really young, 21, and I know he's in AAA. But he's hitting 249. He's got a 389 on base at AAA, which is fantastic. But we're talking about a guy that's got 1,400 plate appearances in the minor leagues in total. So as a high school player. So I just, I think he probably benefits from one more year in the minor leagues, just to be sure, and just to make sure he feels some of these ups and downs. And if you look at prospects on, he's still a relatively high whiff rate in the minor leagues at 31%. Low swing percentage, really low Z swing percentage. So he's making hard contact, and there's a lot of things to like on this on these percentiles. But like I said, I would err on the side of conservative with George Lombard than try to rush and repeat history.
Yeah, I think for me, that's more of like they have their next long-term guy getting close. It's not so much trade Volpe in the next 12 days, call up Lombard 3 weeks after that or 4 weeks after that. But it's kind of saying like that window just seems like it's closed on Volpe at this point. Yeah. Like that's kind of where I'm sitting right now.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I've had enough conversations with Yankees fans lately, thinking that that Lombard is just gonna come over and take over now, like because he's in AAA, he's ready to go. So yeah, I would exercise a little bit more caution in this regard, and have him start in AAA next year. I just, like I said, we've seen it enough. Jackson Holiday too. Jackson Holiday was a kid that came up. They performed really well at the minor leagues. Made the, I think he got called up, didn't make it out of spring training, but got called up pretty quickly and wasn't ready. And it's kind of been a little bumpy. And very few guys come up and perform at a really high level as a 21-year-old. But you're walking on a razor's edge with some of these kids when they get up to the big leagues, because it starts counting, and you start getting labels, and there's expectations, and so you just want to make sure that kid is ready to bear that weight.
All right. I think that's a good way to think about it. Trying to bring the expectations down just a little bit for Yankees fans, right? It's going to take a little time for most prospects to get comfortable. So be patient if and when they do give George Lombard Jr. that starting shortstop job. All right, since you've been a good sport about a surprise segment, I'm going to let you choose hitter or pitcher as a category for today's Name That Dude.
This is you just had to take me down off my pedestal, didn't you?
You might win. You might extend it for another day. You got to be positive.
Had to give me some failure with my success. All right,
come on, you haven't even played yet.
I'm gonna go hitter.
You're going hitter. Okay, I'm gonna try to once again pull this off using the information only on this baseball card. I have a card from the 2021 Topps Heritage set, so that gives you a little bit of a snapshot of which era we're looking at. Not that far in the past. I was born November 19th, 1993 in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm gonna fact check that. That almost seems like it doesn't make sense, but let me.
Is that too early for Bryce Harper?
I was going to say Bryce Harper.
That is the correct date of birth as verified by Baseball Reference.
But it is not Bryce Harper.
It's not Bryce Harper. That's a very reasonable timeline sort of guess. Jed, you want to check a guess? My
guess was also Bryce Harper based on the Las Vegas and the date. So
okay. We'll move on from there. Listed height 6'5", weight 250, bats left, throws right.
So bigger than Harper.
Bigger than Harper.
Bats left, throws right. That doesn't help me enough.
Any guesses, Eno?
Vegas. Bats left, throws right. Who's born in Vegas? Chase Utley.
Not Chase Utley. Okay. Your first guess was better than your second one. That's okay. Here's the key clue from the back of the card. Here's the blurb. Blank was the first player to hit a home run at Globe Life Field, missing the distant hit it here sign by 2 feet. His defense in right field was in the 89th percentile. I feel like now you guys are probably circling around this one.
Are you sure it's not Bryce Harper?
It's not
right
Bryce
fielder?
Harper.
Wait, what?
At the time this card was made, this player had only played in the same organization the entire time.
Oh, I think
Josh
I know who
Hamilton?
He would
Not Josh Hamilton.
Are we talking about a guy who hits a lot of homers and strikes out a lot?
Oh, I've got another guess.
Joey
Jed
Gallo.
gets a guess first.
God, it's
Yes.
Joey Gallo, isn't it?
It's
Damn
Joey
it!
Gallo.
God, that had just occurred to me.
Yeah, the Vegas thing, I don't know why. There might have been a third player that came up around that same time. It is Joey Gallo, but Harper, Gallo, and was there one other, like Chris Bryant, also a Vegas guy, that kind of from that same era?
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think there were just
there's
three
definitely-
that are stuck together in my head. Yeah, he's also a Vegas guy. Looking at even though he went to school at the University of San Diego, Bryant was a prep player coming out of Las Vegas. So there you go. There
Joey
you have it.
Gallo. Whew.
Wanted to ask you, Jed, before we go. You were at Fanatics Fest, like what? So
Yes.
I saw the post we had in the Athletic in our collectibles section about it, and Eno and I were kind of going back and forth. We're like, this looks like a lot of fun, and it's one of those things. It's like, is it the sort of thing that's worth the trip for people that are, hey, I'm thinking about going to a big card show, thinking about going to some kind of big fan festival. Is it worth spending hard-earned dollars, flying out there, getting your hotel, paying for the admission to go check all of it out?
I say yes. I mean that I love that stuff. I mean, we've talked about collectibles and trading cards. That was the first time I had been to Fanatics Fest. It was at the Javits Center, which is the biggest convention center in New York City. I mean, the floor, the space is huge and just packed out from every square inch covered. And, there's a huge section of collectibles and, card shops and just a lot of fun stuff to see. There's some really, really high end stuff. There's an auction house called Heritage that had some really high end stuff. There's a bunch of high end stuff, but the one that I saw that was particularly interesting was Heritage, and just the stuff that you would think that is, growing up, like the James Bond video game from N64, PSA now grades, and the starting, the starting value on some of these things, like the original Mario Kart, in unopened box that's graded, and then
Jeez.
the sports stuff as well. Between your Babe Ruth balls and Jackie Robinson stuff, there's just a lot of really fun stuff to see, and it's hard not to get excited. And then experientially, I got to participate. MLB has their section there, and we had a really fun time. There was a group of us, 3 former pitchers: Scott Kazmir, Dellin Betances, and Jeremy Guthrie. Chris Young, the host on MLB Network, and former outfielder, Jason Kendall, and myself, and Michael Bourne all did a segment in the ABS cage. And so they had an ABS cage, they had a Hit Tracks cage, and the ABS cage was fun. So I went behind the plate. I was the umpire. Jason Kendall, obviously the catcher, and then we had Chris Young and Michael Bourne stand in and see. The challenge was for Guthrie, Kazmir, and Betances to throw 5 pitches. See who could throw the most strikes. Challenges were available. I was the umpire, and they filmed it, and they made a fun segment out of it.
And how did you do in terms of challenges? Were you overturned?
I got overturned one time. I was set up in the slot. I watched enough baseball to know that, that's the safest position to be in. So I was set up in the slot, kind of in, over Jason's left shoulder for a righty, over his right shoulder for the lefty. And Guthrie threw a pitch that was kind of down and away, and I called it a ball. And it was like a lace hit the bottom corner of it.
Still a
strike. And I got instantly challenged by both Jason and Jeremy. And so I kind of knew at that point I was in trouble. Especially if Jason Kendall is challenging me, I knew I was in trouble.
Well, you touch on something that's interesting. So those are the kind of views that we saw into the show. Victor Wembanyama throwing strikes, Tom Brady trying to throw strikes. Isho Speed was there trying to throw strikes. There's there's kind of a fun aspect to it. It's like I could go to a show where I can see the original James Bond cartridge and also Victor Wembanyama throwing a baseball, and so I love that aspect of it. The other aspect of it, though, as a card show, which it is basically at its heart, it's probably not a great place to go and buy a card, right? In terms of so how would you approach it as a fan? Just do it more as like going to a museum and sort of, kind of just enjoy the sights rather than, actually try to leave with something that you might make value on.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, outside of the auctions that are happening there, which, you're going to find market value for an auction for whatever it is at that particular moment. I would just remind people that the price you see is the asking price. That's not, it's not the retail price. So, go into it and don't, do your research, know kind of what you're looking for and the price range you're looking for. And, for the most part, those prices are negotiable. So yeah, it's just it's a fun place to, feel the energy of fans and participate in things. We also did like a fun, taking it back to the cards and the MLB side, we did a wax rip. So there were a handful of us up on stage. We opened up a bunch of cards and we were telling stories and doing trivia for the fans. So, I got this card and, I opened a pack and got Jacob Wilson and Nick Kurtz in one pack. And so I was just, I was asking the fans, I was kind of giving them a little bit, kind of like Name That Dude, right? That we just played. We were kind of playing Name That Dude live. And interacting with the fans and giving away the cards, when they got them right. So, but to take it back to your question, just, enjoy it. If you are in the market, understand that, understand that those are asking prices. And, you can negotiate with the majority of the vendors there. And, they're looking to do business as well.
Saw the National, the other really big card show, is coming up here in just a couple of weeks. It's the weekend leading into the trade deadline in Chicago, or Rosemont near Chicago, I guess. But that same principle probably holds true there, right? Like if you go to the National, you're going to need to negotiate a little bit off of those sticker prices.
Yeah. Yep, I think that's fair. Once again, when you got a price in the market that you're looking at like this, and even if you're on a site like eBay, it'll say a price or best offer, right? Just generally speaking, the listed price is not, it could be a good deal and it might not be. So you just have to do your research, know what you're looking for, because there is a lot of noise out there as well.
I was actually laughing though when I was scrolling through that story on The Athletic, and they had the picture of, it was Roger Goodell standing next to a stormtrooper and Darth Vader standing next to Tom Brady and Fernando Mendoza. Just like, this is a crazy event. Like, what if you just drop someone from 20 years ago onto the platform and said, "Look around you. What's going on?" Like, Tom Brady, like, wow, he looks younger than he did when I saw him last. How'd that happen? And why is he standing next to Darth Vader? That's weird. Is that his kid standing next to him? It's like, no, Fernando Mendoza. He won the Heisman Trophy. So, Anyway, we're going to go on our way out the door. Reminder, you can join our Discord using the link in the show description if you got some hitters you'd like to see move through the Trademaster 3000. Drop some ideas in there. Let us know who you think we should either talk about in the future or just who you think the better fits are out there for some of the position players, because it's actually a little bit tough for all the reasons we talked about. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Thursday.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to hit that subscribe or follow button so you never miss an episode. If you enjoyed it, drop us a like, leave a rating, or sound off in the comments. We'll see you next time.